I read 10 books in the month of March and I have 2 new favorites. Hello everyone, my name is Risha and today's video is going to be a reading wrap up for the month of March. March was a really good reading month for me. I ended up finishing 10 books and I am the kind of person who usually reads one book in 3 to 4 months. I think my New Year resolution to read whatever I want to has really helped. So I'm going to divide this video into 4 sections. The memoirs I read, children's books, fiction and non-fiction. So I read 2 memoirs in the month of March. One of them I loved and the other I absolutely didn't like. The first one which I read was Mother Mary Comes to Me by Arundhati Roy. This is a book which has been shortlisted for Women's Prize for Non-Fiction 2026. Arundhati Roy is a well-known Indian writer and activist. I listened to an audiobook for this and I absolutely loved it. It explored her relationship with her mother, which wasn't the most prettiest, and it also talked about her writing career, her activism, what she believes in, and how she came to terms with her relationship with her mother. So the audiobook is narrated by Arundhati Roy herself. It was really wonderful to listen to her talk about the places and people that were close to her, who shaped her as a person. It was very interesting to know about her relationship with her mother and how her childhood has affected her, because I never thought that was the case. I like the chapter on Kashmir where she says that she's not going to write a book about Kashmir, but Kashmir is going to be in every book she writes, and I thought that was amazing. I also learned about her activism regarding climate change and environment, and how in central India there has been deforestation and genocide on the indigenous population, something I had no idea about. The book was a reminder for me that India is a really big country and there are lots of different places other than New Delhi, Bombay and Goa, which are the places we hear about the most. So this book did bring me to tears, and there are very few books that do that. The next memoir that I read was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I listened to an audiobook for this as well. I thought it would be similar to Mother Mary Comes to Me because it was a memoir about a mother-daughter relationship. It wasn't anything like Mother Mary Comes to Me. Now this book has been really famous on TikTok, on Goodreads, and I guess I shouldn't always go for hyped books. The story was about this Korean American girl singer. The writing style was just like my mother did this and I did that. I was waiting for some insight, some reflection, some depth, but there was none of that. She would mention something really significant and then just gloss over it. There was a lot of talk about Korean food, so if you like to read about food descriptions, this might be for you. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me, so I did not like it at all, and I would not recommend it as well. The next 3 books which I read were children's books. 2 of them were like for toddlers, kids, babies, and then one was a middle grade read. So the first book which I read was Busy Eid. This was my Eid present for my son and he absolutely loved it, and so did I. I just think that representation of different cultures and people is so important in children's books. So far I've only gotten these famous books for my baby like the Gruffalo, but when I gave him this book he was so interested in it and he was interacting a lot with this book, and I think that might be 1 because this has people in it rather than animals, and 2 because representation. Staying on the theme of Eid, I read a middle grade collection of short stories called Once Upon an Eid. These were 15 stories edited by S.K. Ali and Aisha Saeed. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 star. I absolutely loved it and I wish I had read a book like this when I was younger. But even reading it as an adult was brilliant. I usually don't enjoy short stories, but I have to say I was really looking forward to the next short story and the next one and the next one, because I knew they were going to be different, fun and entertaining. It has been ages since a book has made me smile, my heart smile, and there were moments while I was reading this book that my heart felt lighter and smiled, which I don't know if it makes sense, but it really did. I have a few favorite quotes from here as well. The kitchen knows when you are afraid. Then the food tastes of nothing but your timidity. Sometimes things just happen and we have to accept them and move on, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. There was a lot of representation of different kinds of Muslim kids. There was a refugee story in there. There was a story about a child whose mom is really unwell. There was a story about two friends, and one was Shia Muslim and then the other was a Sunni Muslim, and how they learn to embrace their similarities and not focus on the differences. And it was just such a heartwarming collection. I highly recommend it for anyone. I think these are the kind of Muslim stories that children need to read and adults need to read as well. Then I read another children's book. This one was called Sometimes I Feel Sad by Tom Alexander. I got it as an ebook from my library and I have given this a 4-star as well. I thought this was so important, that sometimes you just feel sad and there's nothing you can do to distract yourself from it or just get over it. Something kids need to come to terms with as well as of course adults. It was a really short book, 40 pages with like illustrations, which I have to say I hated. I didn't like the illustrations at all. I thought they could have been so much better, and I wish they can just make a new edition with better illustrations, because they were just pencil stick figures. But the message of the book was really good. Next, I'm going to talk about the two fictional books I read. One of them was a classic and the other was a translated piece of fiction. One I loved and one I hated. So I read A Little Luck by Claudia Pinheiro, translated by Frances Riddle, published by Charco Press. I picked this book because I wanted to read a book written by an Argentine writer, because I have challenged myself to read a book from every country in the world. So something really horrible happened 20 years ago. This woman left Argentina and now she's returning back from Boston after 20 years, and the story slowly unravels. There was a mysterious, thrilling element to the book which I don't typically enjoy, but the way this book was written was really well done. This story again touched me deeply. This was a sad book, a tragedy. It does deal with themes of motherhood and identity crisis and trauma. I really enjoyed this book, but I wouldn't say I loved it because the pacing was a bit slower than what I would have liked. But I'm happy that I picked this book and I stepped outside my comfort zone. The next book which I didn't like was a children's classic, The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Now, I have heard about this book a lot and honestly I didn't like it at all. Terrible illustrations. There was no point to the story. It was just trying too hard to come across as something significant while also trying to hide behind these allegories. Yeah, wasn't for me at all. My baby is up from his nap, so I'm gonna quickly talk about the 3 non-fiction which I read. So the first one was Tuhfatul Urus, which is a religious non-fiction about women's rights in Islam. It was a collection of all the narrations and Quranic verses on women's rights, but I wish there was more context to those narrations, because without context it felt like there was something missing. The next book which I read was Hopes and Prospects by Chomsky. This was a collection of political essays by Chomsky. This was the first time I've read something by him, and I really enjoyed his raw, honest analysis of the political situation. There was obviously a lot of focus on American imperialism. I learned a lot about the involvement of the USA in Latin America. I honestly didn't know much about Haiti, the Vietnam War. This was definitely an eye-opening read. I did, however, find his writing a bit difficult to read. I don't know if I would pick other books by Chomsky, but I would be open to reading more of his shorter works, depending on what I want to learn about. So the last book which I read and I absolutely loved, it's one of my new favorite books now, is Untold Microcosms. It is a collection of essays by Latin American writers. in the British Museum. The British Museum has approximately 62,000 objects from Latin America and South America, spanning 10,000 years of human history. And so there was this collab between Charco Press and Hay Publishers and the British Museum. They invited these writers to pick any object they're interested in and write whatever they want to about it. So it could be a piece of fiction, a short story, an essay, like fantasy, whatever. And the results were epic. This was one of the best things I've ever read, and I don't know why no one is talking about it. So the authors were from all across Latin America: Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Chile, Costa Rica, Brazil, Peru, and every single piece was brilliant. There wasn't a single piece I hated. There was Letter to a Young Mixie Historian. It was brilliant. It was like a letter telling a young historian why museums exist and why objects ended up there in the first place, and it was beautiful writing. Then I really enjoyed Heritage by Carlos Fonseca. So it was about the history of tropical water lilies that were brought from South America to England, and they were named after Queen Victoria at Chatsworth House, which I know about because obviously Pride and Prejudice was filmed there. Because these essays were translated, so this was like a collaboration between writers and translators, and it was brilliant. I would highly recommend. This is my new favorite book from Charco Press, and because of it I'm now keen to pick up more and more books from them. I did have a DNF this month, so I'll quickly let you guys know about that. It was a middle grade book called City of Stolen Magic by Nazneen Ahmed Pathak, and I picked an audiobook because I enjoyed Once Upon a Need, which was a middle grade book. I thought I might enjoy something else as well, but I think the genre of this middle grade book wasn't for me. It was fantasy, colonial India, the history of indigo exploitation. It was really long for a middle grade book, so I think it was 10 hours of audiobook, so I listened to 30% of it, and I was still waiting for the book to kickstart. I was really looking forward for the main character Chompa to come to London because that was what was going to happen next, but I just couldn't continue with it. I was just like forcing myself to listen to it, so I just stopped and I DNF'd it. But apart from that, I had a really amazing reading month. I also have finished 2 other books in April already, and I am reading one as well. Let me know if you want to read any of these books, or which book did you read last month which really stood out. I will see you all in my next video very, very soon. Bye!